May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Duke Audio Podcast. I'm D.C. Poobah of Duke Audio and Duke Archives, doing our bit to help preserve the legacy of Shunryu Suzuki and those whose paths cross his, and anything else that comes to mind. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic hardship, and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within the limitations of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. So today we have a guest, Ben van Overmeire. And he's an interesting guy. He's from Belgium, and he's teaching now in China at I'll read it to you. He's an American professor of religious studies at Duke Kunshan University, and that's a place near Shanghai, if I understand right. He clarifies that in the podcast, and I was a guest of his class like a couple of years ago. That was neat, he's written a book. Well, first, I'll talk about the book, but let me read you what it has to say about him here at the website for the university. Ben van Overmeire, Assistant Professor of Religious Studies, Duke Kunshan University. His research focuses on the study of Zen Buddhist texts. His teaching interests at Duke Kunshan include ethics and leadership, global China studies, religion, and literature. Van Overmeire has a B.A. cum laude and M.A. summa cum laude in Germanic languages and literature from the Vrije, V-R-I-J-E, University, Brussels, Belgium, an M.A. in American Studies, magna cum laude, from the University of Antwerp, Belgium, an M.A. in Comparative Literature, magna cum laude, from the State University of New York, Stony Brook, and a Ph.D. in Literature from the University of California, San Diego. In 2016-17, he was a visiting assistant professor of religion at St. Olaf College. He is also a postdoctoral fellow of the Research Foundation Flanders at Ghent University, Belgium. Wow. He'd got a lot of cum laudes there. Quite good. Now I'm going to tell you about his book. So there was a review of it in Tricycle, and it's called American Koan, Imagining Zen and Self in Autobiographical Literature. And it's a really interesting book. And it has a chapter on thank you and okay. I think that chapter is called Failure. Because, the subtitle of Thank You and Okay was An American Zen Failure in Japan. Anyway, that's enough. You'll hear about it when we talk. and it was nice talking to him because the time, our time was very close. So it was easy to schedule when to talk. When I talk, if I talk to somebody on the East Coast, it's 12 hours different. Anyway, okay, so here we go. Let's hear from Ben van Overmeire. All right, Ben.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. You hear me?
Yes, I can.
Good.
Here's my daughter who wants to say hi.
Oh, hi, dear. How are you?
How are you?
Well, and how? Well, Ben, you're a young guy. Where are you from?
I'm from Belgium.
Oh, you're from Belgium. You know, you've told me all this stuff before, probably. Huh.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. I did my graduate studies in the U.S.
Where? At Duke?
No, UC San Diego.
Oh, nice. Yeah, good area.
Yeah, it was really great. It was great.
Yeah. And your new book is getting it was cool. It got that review in Tricycle. American Koan. I'm bringing it closer. Imagining Zen and Self in Autobiographical Literature. I think that is a smart topic, ma'am.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm glad you like the title.
I'll get it Kindle. I can get it Kindle, I'm sure.
You could, yeah.
Yeah.
And you're obviously you're a part of it, David, right? Like
Oh, yeah.
talk about thank you and okay a fair bit in the second chapter.
Yeah, well, I blush. And, David Guy, who wrote that, I think I did a foreword for a book of his. And he happened to like thank you and okay too. So it was a nice fit. Well, I want you to talk about the book because, that's, you want to plug the book. That's the main thing. Everything else is secondary. And one thing I'm surprised, I have to tell people sometimes, now I didn't wait with you, is people will refer to their book as my book or the book. Better to use the title. Keep drumming that into people's minds where it becomes an earworm.
Okay. So you don't talk about my book. You want me to say American Koan, this and that.
Yeah. Say American Koan. Or, like later, all right, people say, oh, I heard this podcast and this guy was talking about his book that was about autobiography. You want him to say, oh, I was listening to this podcast and I heard a guy talking about this book of his called American Koan. Right?
Right.
So
I mean, I like that because actually I know you haven't been able to read it yet, but I talk in the book in the acknowledgments, but also in other parts, I talk about how, you of all people know very well the Buddhist notion of interbeing, right? The fact that we are all connected, and thus from a Buddhist concept of no self, it doesn't make a lot of sense for me to claim ownership of the book. I mean, I have to, because I'm forced in a position where I have to do this, and as you might know, or as you might not know, but in any case, a book is a prerequisite for me to remain a professor at my university, right? Professors' performance is measured by the amount of publications they output.
Oh, publish or perish.
Yes, exactly. And so from if we use Nagarjuna as like two truths kind of doctrine, from the perspective of conventional truth, yes, I did write this book. But from a perspective of ultimate truth, the whole world wrote this book.
Right.
The whole world created the circumstances that, and you wrote that book, right? The whole world created the circumstances that allowed me to be in a position to, and have the privilege to put the words on paper in a word processor. But I don't want to claim much ownership of the book beyond that from an ultimate perspective. So I guess it's right. You're right. Like, it's not my book. It's American Koan. It's its own thing. So,
Oh, well, I didn't say it's not your book. I mean, those are two different ways to look at it. I just said don't say that. But from the point of view you're speaking now, I guess it is a higher level to refer to the book by name without saying my. Like I've noticed in working with people at Zen centers, say, and other places, if somebody gets a position of authority and they have people under them, I wait to hear them start. Well, I don't wait to hear it. And I'll notice some people start saying, "My staff, my crew, my." Right, and they get a sense of owner, and I've had it too. Right, a sense of ownership. And then, especially like at Zen Center, where it's not completely merit based, right? You get, and like in a lot of places, you get transferred. Maybe you get transferred down, and right, and it's not a merit reward thing. It's like, it happens, and then people. It's interesting to see how much people cling to the job. But anyway, that's getting a little far afield. But I do understand what you're saying about creating things. I look at stuff I've created, writing and music, and I go, where'd that come from?
Right. It's, one of the authors I talk about one of the authors that inspired that position, everybody inspired that position, but one of the authors that particularly inspired that position that I talk about in the book is Ruth Ozeki. And I talk about her novel, A Tale for the Time Being, where she consistently plays with the notion of having an identity. And she does that by putting herself in the book as Ruth. But unlike much of the autobiographical Zen books that I talk about in American Koan, Ozeki, the Ozeki in the book, who is called Ruth, is not really Ruth Ozeki. She has aspects of Ozeki, but it's not really Ruth Ozeki, right? And so she's playing with what who is it that we are really? When we're writing autobiographically, we're only writing down a part of ourselves, right? It's impossible to write down the fullness of the persona of who we are, etc. And then the other thing about that is that she's claimed in like interviews, because so one narrator of that book is Ruth Ozeki, is the character called Ruth, right? She's telling her story. The other narrator is a Japanese girl called Nao. And Ozeki has talked about how this character just suddenly appeared in her head and started talking to her. Right? And she was just writing down what the character was telling her. And this is not uncommon to me. Like I've done some creative writing. I've written some poetry in the past, etc. And I find that I do my best writing when it's coming from somewhere else, right? Like it's not coming from me anymore. So then, the question is, who is doing the writing, right? Like, is it really us who are creating something, or are we a conduit through which creation expresses itself? I find that kind of question really interesting, but it further complicates the notion of like claiming authority over any kind of piece of writing, right?
Yeah. Well, I think that it's, I guess you could say, a higher way to look at it, that you're a conduit. But you can also look at it from the point of view of you're Ben and you wrote this book. There are just different levels of looking at it. I don't like to think of any one way of looking at anything as being the true way. You know what I mean?
Sure,
I mean, it
get
might be right now. I go, oh yeah, that's it.
For me, it's not. I mean, I think Zen, in Zen, it's talked about that way as well, right? Like, it's not like the ultimate perspective is the correct perspective, but it counterbalances the ordinary perspective, right? And so it's this constant kind of dialogue between two perspectives that kind of keeps us unbalanced and prevents us, I think, from getting stuck up with ourselves, right? And so we constantly need that balance, because if then you say like, oh, this is the truth, then you're again getting stuck up with the truth. You're building authority on top of it, and that's not something that I see most Zen masters as pushing us towards. It's like this continuous. It's rather a continuous dialogue, a continuous encounter with another perspective. And so in the book, I present that perspective because I think it's healthy for people to encounter that. It certainly was healthy for me to encounter that perspective.
Well, I just I just think it's really, what would I say? You really hit a good topic. That's sort of like it resonates, the role of autobiography, because there's not a great deal of that, but there, Yogananda's autobiography of a yoga. So that's, I mean, if you go back in time, how much of that is there? Dogen wrote about his experiences, where I just never thought about it from that point of view before.
I mean, but in Zen in China, the Platform Sutra is all about the sixth patriarch, talking about his life. I think there's a lot of debates and literary studies about how and when autobiography arose and whether autobiography is a Western genre or not. And I think that's super relevant, but I do think that there is something special to the way that people, because in the 20th century, a lot more people than ever previously started writing down their lives. We're writing down our lives constantly. On Facebook, we're making posts, right? We're constantly doing the autobiographical. Right. And so I do think there's a difference in scale, at least, as to how, memoirs everywhere. There's just a difference in volume in autobiography in the 20th century. Plus, what's special about most of the people that I talk about is that few of them claim the title of Zen Master. I talk about Kapleau and Suzuki, who to some extent do, but otherwise, like, you don't claim to be a Zen Master, right, David? Like a lot of
no, I don't.
Some of the people teach, but they never, so they speak from a perspective which I find really very interesting. That's also in Thank You and Okay, from a perspective of like not knowing. What you talk about as failure, like it's in the title of Thank You and Okay. So, and that is something I think relatively new in Zen autobiography. I mean, Dogen talks about failure, but his failure is his success, right? Like, for Dogen, the great failure is a great success. So yeah, those are, I don't know where I was going with that, but that was in response to what you were saying.
Yeah, well, I've done a lot of interviews and gotten memories from a lot of people and just known a lot of people where I wasn't interviewing them, I was just knowing them. And long ago, and I didn't think of this when I suggested that name, that subtitle for Thank You and Okay. But later I thought, what does every teacher and practitioner have in common? And I'd say a sense of failure. The teachers I've known, I mean, not like a total sense, but, Suzuki, Shunryu Suzuki wanted to live longer. He had there was more he wanted to do. He felt people weren't understanding his teaching. He didn't like to discourage people, but anyway, but there was that with him. Katagiri definitely very strongly felt things hadn't worked out the way he'd hoped. But I could just go on and on. But anyway, it does seem. I don't know. I think it's good because what if you don't have some sense of failure in this business? What do you think? You think you've won it? Hey.
Right. I think failure. I mean, it's a way to learn, right? Like I have two small children. You just saw my daughter. We learn by. It's very clear to me that you really teach by allowing your kids to fail at something. That's how they really get it. Because
Yeah.
you can't take it on your best thing. But I also think that failure is a really useful counterweight for us getting too egocentric. There's this whole ideology of success that I talk about in the book, which is Elon Musk, all these people with huge egos, Trump. Like, sorry to make it political, but and they're not exceptions. I mean, on the Democrat side, on the left side, you could find people like that as well. They're all boasting of their successes and never really talking about their failures, right? But I think if we do talk about this is the problem with Facebook too. People don't often talk about stuff that goes wrong in their lives on social media. They only talk about their successes. And this is really dangerous, I think, because it creates this kind of inhuman image of reality. Like if people then fail, it's not normal. But as you say, it's very normal to fail, right? Like failure is growth. At least when failure is faced directly and openly, it is one of the best things that can happen to you. So I think the way we've started talking about failure, and this is due to, there's a historian that talks about this. This is basically due to capitalism. Before the 19th century, the idea that a person could be a failure was incomprehensible. It's even incomprehensible if you look at it, right? How can a person be a failure? This is just, that somebody's identity could be a failure is incomprehensible, except within a mechanic of making money, starting businesses. A business can fail. But this term of failure gradually became applied to people as well, which is how we're talking about failures and successes as people's identities right now. But it's really important to remember that that's not the way people used to identify. And honestly, it's not the way we should identify. Regardless of what you do in your life, you could never be a failure. You're a human being. You do things, yes. But
Yeah.
that's it, right?
Yeah. When I came up with that title, I came up with it on the spot. I was talking with my agent, who was also my best friend, and who forced me to write thank you and okay, sort of.
I'm glad.
Because he said, hey, your letters are great. They can be a book. He was a very successful agent for, a lot of people were selling very well. He said, I guarantee you, I'll get you a contract. But just keep writing that. And, later on, maybe a couple of years later when I was further along on it, we're talking about what to call it. I don't know if I brought it up or he brought it up, but the thank you and okay just was this repeated theme in it, and we needed a subtitle. So we'd already agreed on thank you and okay. Needed a subtitle, and I just said, "How about an American Zen failure in Japan?" and I fell down on the floor laughing. To me, it was like a joke, or it was funny. And I found in doing readings, especially like in a Berkeley type place, some people would be very concerned that I'd say them, would take it very seriously and ask, why did I say that? It's just part of the mix.
I like, and I wish I had known that you felt that you were forced to write thank you and okay, because that's so similar to much Zen writing over the centuries, right? Like all these people were, Hakuin, for example, talks about how, he didn't want to write anything, but then his students forced him to write stuff down. And all the koans supposedly were transmitted against the will of the masters, but the students were taking notes and writing them down and transmitting them. So it's it really embodies the Zen position of using language to get at a point beyond language, right? And what role does language play? And that's obviously a major topic in the book, because if Zen is supposed to be about not standing in words and letters, well, why are people writing all these autobiographies, right? Like, shouldn't they just be meditating? So that's an interesting question. And it's also something, I have a decent tricycle that will likely be published this week.
Oh, good.
Which draws out that strain of the book a little bit about the role literature has in Zen practice. I mean, for me, the language, like anything, is just pointing to the moon, right? And it's really important that we don't mistake the finger for the moon. But it's also we can't dismiss language. I mean, Zen Buddhists throughout the centuries have not dismissed language. I mean, they were amazing poets. They published these koan collections, published essays, etc. Dogen wrote a huge shobogenzo, right? Right. But the important thing is not to get too attached to them, as if they could contain the whole of reality, because they can't, right?
Right. Yeah, Dogen would step. He puts the time when he writes things. It'd be like 2 a.m, while he's telling his monks, to be very strict with themselves. And I don't know exactly, but if you read Zui Monkey, it's pretty brutal. He also said, though, something like, the life of Zen master is one continuous mistake. I don't remember exactly where. So that's more of that. It's the thing is that what we really are, that the word failure doesn't apply to. It only applies at the relative level.
Yeah.
As far as not admitting mistakes, your examples were world-class comic book level extreme examples of not admitting a mistake of any kind ever. I mean, it's just humorous,
Yeah, of course. But it says something more broadly about I think the time that we live in. We're trying to build these public identities for ourselves that are very closed off, right? There's nothing there. Everything's perfect, right? Whereas I think failure opens you up. Like admitting that you don't have everything figured out is, I think, really important. And it's really important to do that with other people, because it allows us really to be human, for lack of a better word. One of the things that I'm proud of in the book is that I've tried to do that with my own position as an author as well. There's in the introduction, etc. I talk about my own position, my own experiences with Zen. How I've changed my position. So I think it's really important also for professors to do that, because professors, we talk about Zen masters, but professors too, there's a real risk of us getting attached to our position, right? Like, as people who are supposed to know it all, just like a Zen master, but on a different type of knowledge.
Right.
So yeah, for me, failure is important. Many mistakes.
Yeah. So where did you first get interested in anything spiritual, or what did you grow up with? When were you born? What year were you born?
What year? I was born in 1984.
Ha! Wow.
Were you
you're 41.
You were not in Japan yet in 1984. Yes, at 41.
Yeah. 84, I was 39. Yeah. That's right. Well, that's a good year. And were you born in Belgium?
Yeah. I spent until I left. I've been back to Belgium. I obviously go back every year to see family. But,
you go back every year to Belgium?
Yeah.
Wow.
I have 3 siblings, and my dad's still alive.
Yeah.
So I go back every year, but I guess I moved away, and this was for graduate school. This was in 2007. Then it was the U.S. for a while. Then China intermittently. Then I made my wife who's from Japan, and I ended up spending some time in Japan as well and learning Japanese.
Where in Japan?
She's from Shizuoka province. Good tea and sushi.
Oh, Shizuoka?
Yeah. Ryuta is there. Yeah. Mishima, right?
Wow. That's very near, of course, Rinso-in, Suzuki's temple.
Is it?
Yeah,
is it?
Yaizu.
Okay. Is that a Yaizu? Okay. That's not super near the town where my wife is from, which is Numazu. Yaizu is a little bit more on the west side, if my geography is correct. But I know where that is. Yeah.
Well, it's on the water.
Yeah. It is.
Yaizu's where you remember what? Oh, of course you don't remember, but there were Japanese fishermen who were poisoned with radiation from the first hydrogen bomb tests down by Bikini Atoll.
And
they were out of Yaizu, and Suzuki participated in an anti-nuclear march about it. That people tried to stop him from doing it around the temple because they're all very conservative, and there were communists in the march. But communists in Japan are not like communists elsewhere. They're a recognized party. Anyway, yeah, all right. That's interesting. Mishima.
So,
I've been to Mishima. Yeah.
It's a nice town. It's not so far from Tokyo.
Hey, are there hot springs in Mishima?
There are, but you need to head into the mountains a little bit.
Yeah.
I think downtown, I don't recall there being a hot spring over there.
All right.
But the whole, especially that neighborhood, right? Because you have the whole Izu Peninsula jutting out into Izu's super famous for its hot springs, right?
Yeah, is that Izu Peninsula?
Yeah, Izu. Yeah,
exactly.
I've
been to hot springs there.
Yeah. It's a fantastic region. I really like it a lot.
Yeah. So in Nakagawa's temple, is there too. Uh, uh, so in Nakagawa, who was a big teacher in the 60s.
Yeah.
Right now, I forget the name of the temple. I know it, but
Isn't it Ryutakuji?
that's it.
Where
Yeah, that's
yeah.
it. That's it. Well, anyway, all right. So I got sidetracked by Japan. Uh, hmm. How long were you in Japan?
Yeah, I've never been there for long amounts of time. The maximum amount of time that I've ever been there, I think, is 3, 4 months or something.
Uh huh.
'Cause I was already doing the PhD at the time.
What?
China, I was there for 1 year to study the language, obviously.
Oh, just
That
to
was
study the language. Uh,
yay.
yeah, good for you. Smart move. Uh, mm. So now, in terms, the one thing we talk about sometimes is your way seeking mind story. Like, if you go back, like, what was the religious background you come from? Maybe
I,
nothing.
I was raised as an atheist,
Yeah.
so my parents didn't think much of religion, and this is fairly common in Belgium, maybe not a lot of people explicitly identify as atheists, but definitely not a lot of people go to church. I mean, things might have changed. Again, I haven't lived there in a while, but my sense is not that it's changed much. Um,
I think that's a good starting point.
the dominant religious force in Belgium is the Catholic Church.
Uh,
I think part of the reason that my parents were not in favor of religion is in Belgium, especially in the 90s, there were a bunch of scandals with priests abusing children,
oh, yeah.
all over the place, right? And also, my parents were raised. My dad went to school. This is very common in Belgium in a Catholic institution, and he covered a lot of the hypocrisy of the church, and for him, the church really stood in opposition to science. And my dad's a scientist. He's a professor as well, or he's now an emeritus. And so, so naturally they weren't in favor of religion, and they allowed us to do our own thing, right? But this was just the environment that I grew up in, and obviously, a child is going to hardly copy or rebel against their parents' viewpoints. I guess I did both, but initially I really went along with that. I think it was when I went to university and I studied literature, and I started, a lot of poetry, which I was really interested in. A lot of poetry throughout the ages is religious in nature, right? You have mystical poetry, you have poetry about the Bible, etc. And I saw the beauty of that. Of this poetry. But to understand it more, I needed to understand the sources, and especially for Dutch and English poetry, which is what I was studying, I started reading the Bible, and I found it. I was really fascinated by it because these stories, which were so strange and different from a scientific worldview. This notion that somebody would have come to Earth and then died for you, etc. I found it all. I didn't necessarily subscribe to it or didn't convert to Christianity, but I found it really moving. I find these stories really, really moving and touching. And I forget to mention the reason why I started studying literature, which is because when I was 18, I was hesitating between physics, which I was really good at, and literature. And the reason I chose literature was because I read this poem, not a religious poem. I read this poem, and felt like while reading the poem that the poem was saying something that could not be put in words. It was just the words. The poem was transcending itself. It was telling me something that I myself could not put in words, and I found that really, really strange. And the reason I wanted to study literature was so I could understand what I felt when I read that poem. I felt like that was really something that mattered to me. But of course, that was, I didn't see this at the time, but it was going to drive me in the direction of mystical poetry, which is exactly about like giving voice to what cannot be said. So that came first. Later on, I read a lot of Western poetry initially, but later on, I did my bachelor thesis on, a Dutch poet that was incorporating a lot of the Chinese sources, which is how I encountered Chinese poetry, which also I found really interesting because the world it was portraying, the literary world I was portraying, was so alien, so exotic, that I wanted to know more. And then ultimately I got to Zen because of all the things that I encountered, Zen gave me ways not just to write literature and understand literature, but also to do some kind of practice that would help me live my life. Because it was also, for me, college education, and this is a rarity today, at least with my students, but I think across the world. But for me, it was also, I went to college to understand the meaning of my life. And, I didn't really, college didn't manage to solve that meaning, but I felt Chinese philosophy, and particularly Zen, they gave me practical methods, practical ways of getting at the meaning of life, solving the questions for myself. And that led to a lifelong fascination with Zen.
Well, what were your sources?
Initially, the book that drew me to Zen initially, I'd read Suzuki. Okay, no, I read Suzuki, D.T. Suzuki, not Shunryu.
Right.
I did read Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, but that was much, much, much later. Initially, it was D.T. Suzuki, like an introduction to Zen Buddhism.
Right.
I was like, yeah, these ideas are interesting. I listened to a series that I have to track down, but there was a series of audio recordings that circulated at the university describing the lives of Zen masters.
Huh.
And at some point I need to track down who wrote that because it was really interestingly done. But then what really got me hooked was Alan Watts' The Way of Zen. And to this day, I just reread The Way of Zen, and I'm doing my second book project, which I can talk about later. It's partly about Watts, but for all his problems, the way Watts, and for all his idiosyncrasies, the way he approaches both Taoism and Zen Buddhism, I think it's so fascinating. It's so well done, and it drew me in so deeply.
Right.
Because his whole position is that Zen is telling us that there is no problem, right? And we should just be. One of his latest collections is called "Become What You Are," right? Like, there's no need to try and become anything else. You just need to settle for become what you are and own that.
Yeah.
And I guess everybody has their different kind of. We all come with different subconscious tendencies and predispositions. But at that point in my life, Watts told me what I needed to hear.
Yeah.
To put it. And so that that was really what got me hooked.
Yeah, I agree. He wasn't appreciated much by practitioners in the 60s. I knew him a little bit, and I liked him a lot. But he was so brilliant. And, he'd helped Shunryu Suzuki out when Suzuki first came. I sort of You know, Richard Baker really admired Watts and Suzuki. When some friend of mine at Tassajara put down Watts saying, "We've got the real thing," Suzuki chewed him out, said he didn't understand Watts, that he was a great bodhisattva. And Trungpa absolutely loved reading Watts, and
Sure.
just met him toward the end of Watts' life. But you know, one thing I just had the thought of is like Trungpa said that he thought Watts must be enlightened until he met him. And I take everything with a grain of salt, you know, but I think we could look at Watts as a great channel.
What was the last thing you said? Great channel?
We can look at him as a great channel.
Exactly.
Really superb.
Yeah.
I mean, so many people came to Zen through Alan Watts. He didn't emphasize practice. He helped people see the fundamental nature of reality as he could describe it. That just turned so many people around and is still doing it. There's a renaissance of Alan Watts. And anyway, so I think that's a good place to start. So what happened next?
So I went to the U.S. First and to Stony Brook University, which is on Long Island, New York State, and to study comparative literature, and kind of deepen my knowledge of literary theory, because I knew that I also wanted to continue to study literature. You know, books have always been extremely important for me. And then afterwards, I went and entered a PhD program in the same discipline in UC San Diego. And at UCSD, which is not so far from one of Thich Nhat Hanh's temples in California, Deer Park.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I got my first shot at experiencing a kind of monastic lifestyle. And it was so fantastic. It was so transformative for me. Being able to be in a place where people were living very tranquil, quote unquote, pure lives, but in, if you've been to Deer Park, it's kind of in the mountains. Like, you have to drive up a bunch of mountains to get there. And the monks, one of the first times I was there, we got up early in the morning to meditate, and afterwards the monks took us up to one of the mountains to see the sunrise. It was just amazing.
Oh, that's great.
And so we at UCSD, we actually took students there as well. Like, students could sign up, and we took them there for one of the retreats.
Now, the monks, were they Westerners, or were they Vietnamese, or what?
It was a mixture. So some of them were Americans who had entered, and some of them were Vietnamese. I suspect, and then I don't know this for sure. I don't really study Thich Nhat Hanh's organization that much, but I think they do an exchange regularly. Like, they have monks rotate locations, is what I suspect they do. Mm-hmm. I guess it keeps the monastic community alive and not, interactive, connected, right, with different with the different Thich Nhat Hanh monasteries across the world. So yes, to answer your question, it was a mixture. So that happened. I really felt deeply attracted to it. By that time, I think, yeah, by that time I'd already spent a year in China studying Chinese, and this was with the purpose of reading the original um, Zen Buddhist texts in Chinese, right? Like the record of Lingji, all that kind of text. I wanted to be able to read Koan, which I'd become really interested in the original translation, or at least be able to say whether a translation was good or not. And so during another summer, I went with there's this Taiwanese nun called Yifa. She teaches in California, and she organized she organized these wooden fish retreats, which are still going, I believe, and those took me for a month-long retreat in a temple in China. Which was also really very interesting. So my interest in the literature of Zen gradually became nourished with these practice periods. So yeah, so it led to, yeah, even today I sit every day. It's a continued source of growth for me.
Now you're in where in China?
I'm in Kunshan. Kunshan is not too far from Shanghai. If you ever visit,
No, I've never been to mainland China.
Okay, so if you ever come, so you just land in Shanghai, and then you can take a high-speed rail or car. It takes you maximum 2 hours from Pudong Airport to get here. And so I teach here at a liberal arts college. That's a collaboration between Duke University in the U.S. and Wuhan University, which is a very high-ranked, well-regarded Chinese university. So that's what we do. It's a liberal arts college in China. 70% of our students are Chinese. 30% are international from all over the world.
And what's it like around there? Do you get out? Do you get out in nature any?
And so it's this area of China is very densely populated, right? If you look out on my window, you see a lot of like skyscrapers, and we're not even in the center of. I live in Suzhou, which is close to Kunshan. I commute. We're not even in the center of this area, right? At the same time, China, the government here, and Chinese people in general love parks. There's this I live right next to a river, and whenever I go out, even late at night, people are dancing in the parks. They're like playing cards. They're like doing exercises, walking their dogs, etc. This is really all over. So parks are really, where I'm from, nobody enters a park after nightfall, or at least very few people do. But here, the life is led outside in parks. So if I wanted untamed, pure nature, I need to like travel for a while. But if I want the experience of a park of just being among trees, that's right outside my apartment building. So yeah, I don't know whether that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it does give me a good idea. I mean, I live in Bali, and people have all these pictures of Bali in their mind from all the PR. Even the travelogue people just give you the most ideal sort of distorted picture. Like there's tons of traffic and everything sort of. I like living in the city, though. But we live right by a beach. So we live in a beach town right on the edge of Denpasar, but I like infrastructure. And, I like to be able to walk to,
Good.
we can walk, we don't drive anything, we walk to what we need. And if not, get a ride real cheap nearby. But I'm curious about China. I doubt if I'll go there. I'm not real interested in doing much traveling. But China seems very sane, like compared to America, and it emphasizes stability and anyway, they're sort of what, and it seemed to me they're moving toward like cutting edge in every field. And so I'm worried about too much restrictions on expression and stuff, but the world really needs stability and needs people taking climate change seriously, and I think they take it more seriously than America does. Am I right?
That sounds right. China isn't the perfect country for reasons that you just discussed. Whenever I speak about China, I'm not dismissing any of that. But China is also not North Korea.
Right.
My children are here. My wife, who is Japanese, is here. They're all here, and we are leading very safe lives. I love biking. There's lots of bicycle paths that I can take with my road
Yeah.
bike.
Yeah.
Life is very technologically advanced, right? You use your phone for basically everything here.
Yeah.
Nobody uses cash anymore, so it's cutting edge that way as well. Yes, there's cameras everywhere, but to put it plainly, there's concerns related to that. But on the other hand, I go out at 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm not scared of anything or anyone except for the traffic. The traffic can be horrible.
That's true here too, but there's no cameras.
Okay, that's even better.
It's about like Japan here, a little bit like Japan and maybe not as one of the main things you can look at in terms of safety is general safety, general crime rate, and then what's it like for a woman? Because that's very different culture to culture. So in India, I wouldn't let my wife walk by herself in the daytime in a park or anything, right? Here, she'll go down to the beach at night by herself. Don't think anything of it. They have a little crime, but not much. And I understand there's a very low crime rate where you are too.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's also because punishments are very harsh. Well, I mean, my wife once my wife once got robbed in Beijing. This is a long time ago. This is what, 2012, and so she's walking on her own. She's going to work in the morning. She's walking on her own. She's listening to music on her with earbuds. She's listening to music on her phone, right? And this is in a time when you didn't have Bluetooth connection, or it wasn't very common, so it's a wire connection. Suddenly the music stops, right? And she checks, and her phone's gone, right? Now on the street, there's only one other person. Okay, so where did the phone go? The other person probably has it. So my wife walks up to this person, confronts him, and urges him to give her phone back in Chinese. This person panics, runs away. My wife continues walking, and she's probably walking to the police station at this point, right, to report that her phone was stolen. but it gets stopped by the boss of the person who just stole her phone, who gives her phone back and then apologizes for the inconvenience. So in no country that I've ever lived in, except for China, does this kind of thing happen, right?
Now,
Like,
so he gave the phone back, and the person who took it, there was no official repercussions.
It's because I guess I don't know whether my wife chose to report it anyway, but there was no official repercussions because I guess the problem was that the theft had been noticed by the person, and then
Right.
and the
Right.
identified wasn't worth the
Right.
hassle. But
Right.
it just struck me as so typical of this place where even if a crime is committed, you just get your stuff back.
Yeah. I've seen that happen here, and there's very, very little robbery here. I don't hear about robbery of stores, Although the I go to a ATM with an armed guard. He has an automatic weapon, right? I don't know what it's for, but anyway, I do go there because there's other types of crime like Eastern Europeans jamming things in ATMs so they can take your money, so it's reading it and stuff. I've had that happen twice. That's why I always go to one with a 24-hour guard. But I can think of a few examples of iPhones being taken. Now, where we live, it's so low crime. There's some other places like you shouldn't put your iPhone down on a table if you're sitting like near a street or a sidewalk. That's just not smart. I know some people that had an iPhone stolen from them by someone who was working for them. It was a tailor had come to take some measurements in their home, and it couldn't have been anybody but him, just like, And they knew him. They'd known him a long time. And so, they went to the police. They were pissed. The police got him, and they got their iPhone back, but he didn't have to admit he did anything. It's sort of like they got it back, and, he had to save face. But there's some strange stories like that. I leave, right now while I'm talking to you, my wallet is in a drawer downstairs. Our housekeeper's down there, and our gardener is a little bit nutty. They both know where it is. I don't worry about them. If they took anything, they'd probably need it. I wouldn't even worry about it. They might need the equivalent of $6 or $3, but they don't. Very, very low rate of that sort of thing here. All right, here's another question. What about the river? How polluted is it?
It's not clean. And pollution is a real issue in this country. I think I imagine, it's gotten much, much better than it was when I first came to Beijing, which is now, Beijing is famous for its pollution still. But it was 14 years ago or something. Is that right? Something like that. And it was so bad. It gave me insights into how Victorian England must have been with the Industrial Revolution or something like that, right? Because it was all coal, right? Like, just, that was a major driver back then. And the cars were all gasoline cars. Right now, in this neighborhood at least, it's hard to find gasoline cars because everybody drives electric vehicles, right? Yeah. So that's significantly contributed to the cleaner air, and it's also switched from coal to other resources. So the pollution is still much worse than where I'm from, but it's no longer the case that except exceptionally that there's this like fog because of the pollution. So there's air pollution, and then the river is polluted. It doesn't stop most people. At night, one of the things I see is like people fishing in the river, and lots of people catch huge fish in it, right?
Huh.
The fish do survive in it, and people eat those fish. I wouldn't, but it's not that bad that it's like a mercury pool or whatever, right? Like if fish can survive in it, it cannot
Yeah.
too horrible.
Oh, mercury. Well, 30 years ago, tuna fish that were tested for mercury and stuff, they couldn't throw them back in the ocean because it would the levels of pollutants were too high. If they threw them back into the ocean, they'd be breaking the law. Ones they just caught there. I mean, this is a major problem. Our bodies are full of, mercury and microplastic. Mercury, especially from coal. What about floating trash? That's the big thing here. Plastic.
Yeah, you do see that, but the thing, there's a huge, on the streets too, there's a huge amount of cleaning staff for all kinds of surfaces. So the streets are kept clean by, well, bodhisattvas, picking up people's trash. So the streets are very clean.
Yeah.
And then the rivers are kept clean the same way by people who have boats, and they just collect everything that's floating in the.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, that's a big problem here. Indonesia doesn't have the level of governance. It's more like probably a little bit maybe between China and India. It just doesn't have governance. I mean, I'd never heard of anybody getting a ticket for driving, or you can, but it's self-regulated wonderfully. Very cooperative driving here. Well, that's interesting. With that trash, recycling, the use of plastic, global problem everywhere. It's a terrible problem. I hear the electric cars of China is by far the most superior one. Biden put 100% tariff on them, is my understanding. And he shouldn't have done that because they're really supposed to be superior. Do you know about that?
I mean, I know that the EU as well, but had some protectionism going on there. I think certainly, because I don't have a car either here. But the Chinese equivalent of Uber is very affordable and very effective. It's actually better than Uber in the US, I would say.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm sure.
I get into those electric cars quite often, and they seem great.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, like, you have a very strong government that has put charging stations basically all over the country, right? So there's also plenty of places to charge your electric car.
Yeah, that's good. Well, in America, people mad at Musk, they're making a big mistake attacking his charging stations because they opened up like a year ago to all types of electric cars, not just Teslas. And so the Tesla, is that right? Am I using the right word?
Do you mean the electric car produced by Elon Musk?
Yeah, Musk's electric cars. They're Teslas.
That's
right. Suddenly I went, well, anyway, their charging stations are very important in America. They're not just for Teslas, so they shouldn't attack that. I don't like destroying things anyway.
I agree. Destroying things is not.
Yeah, I never was into that in the anti-Vietnam War thing. I didn't. I was raised, with regard for property and not destroying, not wasting things. But I certainly was against the war. Yeah. All right. Well, now, so you're there, and what do you teach in?
I teach courses on religious studies, so how to understand what religions are, and also I teach introductory religious courses. I teach courses on Chinese religions. I've taught courses on Buddhism, um, and so on. It's great to do that kind of work here, especially since this is a liberal arts college, and so our classes tend to be very small. Currently, maximum enrollment for a class is 18 students, which is tiny compared to what some institutions do. But that means that you get to work with the students really closely.
Right.
And for me, the investment is both to understand what religions are, defining religion, etc., very scholarly concerns, but it's also about, okay, what, as a student who's likely an atheist, what can you take from religions that can help you live your life in a more fulfilling, happier way, right? I'm also interested in giving students resources for that.
Yeah. Well, to me, I was raised in a sort of non-theistic type of Christian approach. We didn't really. I don't know if we called ourselves Christian, but sort of like New Thought Christianity, where God was not. It was like Christian Science, where it was mind. It segued right into Buddhism perfectly, because definitely the idea of God as an external being. I was never taught. We just thought other people were sort of superstitious. So I tended to intellectually be more comfortable with atheists, because people who had religion either were just going to it because their parents did, or had some idea of this super being that just since I was never taught it, it just seemed it would. I don't know, superstitious, but was never a problem. We didn't care. But there's, in teaching in China, you've got Taoism and Buddhism to me are fundamentally non-theistic. What happens, though, is religions become very superstitious because that's what people want. They all do. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, for the masses. Anyway.
I don't necessarily think that that's I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing, though. I think, as you know, in Zen specifically, particularly has this notion of upaya, right, of skillful means, right?
Right.
And so, okay, so fundamentally, I believe that Buddhism has some valuable things to tell us. I don't think you need to become a Buddhist to learn about those things, right? And if somebody goes for example, a thing in China is that there's this big college entry examination.
Did you say fake?
What?
State?
No, big. And I did not say fake. I said fake. No, this is a real test. Big, as in huge, large. A large college examination.
Oh, okay.
Yes, not fake. That everybody has to take, and it's an extremely difficult test. And most kids train their entire teenage years go towards preparation for this test.
It's like Japan.
Yes, it's kind of like Japan. And so even though almost 90% of the population declares themselves atheist, a lot of these students and their parents, before taking the test, they go to a temple and they Guan Yin Kanmon for good results on the test. Or maybe they ask Manjushri. It depends from case to case, right?
Kanon, I think would be much more likely.
Well, Manjushri is the Bodhisattva of wisdom, right? So,
right.
Anyway, and so, from a Buddhist perspective, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Yes, you're there for something, what we would call superstitious. But at the same time, you're in a temple, you're learning about Buddhism. It could be a first step towards a more compassionate, reflective lifestyle, right? So,
right.
There are these religions, and then they can be annoying, but as long as they're not harming people, I don't think that they're necessarily.
That's true. I like animism. I mean, Bali, is Hindu, is what they say, but to me, the Hinduism is like sort of lip service. It's sort of intellectual. What they're really into is animism, is spirits, and making offerings to spirits constantly. I mean, in Japan, too. I feel the same thing about Japan, but Japan is really sort of atheist to me. But to me, what has the most life in Japan is Shinto for the masses, and there's a lot of intellectuals or some people that are into Buddhism, but mainly they think of it as a funeral service.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And the Shinto's the positive stuff. I think here people are more sincerely involved with the spiritual practice in a sense than I've ever seen. I'm sure there's the Tibetan type countries have got it beat. I mean, I've been around Tibetans; they're really into it. But I agree with you, though, that even that which seems to be ridiculously superstitious, it holds people together. It holds cultures together, and it can be very depressing if there's some idea that you're just born and you die and there's nothing but this material world. That's very depressing. It's not good for cultures or society. And, I have a sort of, I think about, and I've talked on a couple of podcasts just about it, that the people who, the intellectuals, the brilliant intellectuals who are arguing against fundamentalist religion as if that is religion. And Neil deGrasse Tyson does it. Christopher Hitchens did it. Carl Sagan did it. It's very common. Einstein didn't. Einstein had a more deeper understanding. But to me, they're not providing good public service because they're telling people that what religion is this completely literal fundamentalist thing. They don't seem to know they're anything else, and that it's all a pot of crap. So there's nothing. So what you're left with is science. Well, science by itself is not full enough. Anyway, I think about that stuff a lot, I've actually tried to get messages to Neil deGrasse Tyson. I'd like to talk to him about this. I mean, he doesn't know about that. Is he unaware that, that there's more to, including Christianity and Islam and all of them, than to this literalist belief? The problem is that's dominant. But It would be like attacking science because there's people who are flat earthers.
Right.
You know?
Well, or because of the whole eugenics movement in the 19th century.
Eugenics, flat earthers, right. All sorts of stuff. You know, people who are against, say, vaccines. That's a little more nuanced in that area. But anyway, so I agree with you.
I think one of the issues is that, and this is something, there's one point that I try to bring home to students in my classes, is that there's no such thing as religion. Religion doesn't exist. The only thing that exists are people practicing religion, and and those are of all types of different. Those are different people, right?
That's right.
You have the fundamentalists, but then you have people on whose Catholic faith gives them deep support after losing something that's valuable to them, right? But who are very tolerant. So there's all throughout history as well. There's all types of so-called Buddhists and Catholics, etc. So what can you say based about Buddhism or Christianity based on that, or about religion based on that? Well, very little, right? Like we need to be not lazy and look at how specific people practice their beliefs, right? And then you get a vast variety of different interpretations. And so Richard Dawkins and Carl Sagan and whatever, they might be against some of those manifestations, but I doubt that they'd be against all of it. So I think your quest of informing people is
well,
a good one.
Yeah, I think Dawkins has a little better understanding of, although I don't pay that much attention to it. Oh, I'll tell you my favorite line, and I've said it in other podcasts, that America's #1 progressive talk show guy is Thom Hartmann. He's really great. Thom Hartmann. And he had Christopher Hitchens on, I don't know, about 15 years ago. And Hitchens was going on about how there is no God or something. And Hartmann said, yeah, but don't you think it's sort of like shooting fish in a barrel? You understand that term? Like,
Sure.
it's just easy pickings, man.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I have read into podcasts several times. I've been doing them 6 years. Pseudo-Dionysius's Mystical Theology, which is like Heart Sutra of Christianity. Yeah, it's like
most Christians wouldn't say that, but I think it's really important text. Yes.
Yeah.
For Christian mysticism, right? Yeah.
Yeah. It's the neti of Christianity. You know, neti of Hinduism, not this, not that. It's so great. Well, is there any subject that we haven't hit on?
Well, I mean, as long as I'm talking to you, I'd like to tell you about my next book.
Yeah, do. There's no time limit, man.
So, yeah, I mean, I also don't want to make it too long, but so I'm now working on a book on the Buddhist imagination of outer space. So,
cool.
I mean, you've seen Star Wars, right? Maybe you saw it in the cinema. When
I saw Star Wars like the first night it was on because Harrison Ford was in it, and Harrison Ford was the brother-in-law of Paul Lee, was Richard Baker's best friend, along with Mike Murphy, and it was like his first big film, and so. Yeah.
I mean, and as you probably know, like the second movie has Master Yoda, And Yoda is very clearly inspired on Shunryu Suzuki. That's why Yoda puts verbs at the end of the sentence.
Uh-huh.
Lucas was mimicking the kind of uh, that was mimicking a Japanese sentence construction. And the new movie is actually, the last part of the trilogy actually takes this even a little bit further, where they're putting fire to the sacred Jedi scriptures, right? Like Doshan, Tuksan, putting fire to his commentaries on the Diamond Sutra in a famous interaction. So Star Wars is in some ways deeply influenced by Buddhism. There's this guy who wrote a book called The Dharma of Star Wars, and you can find lots of books on that on Amazon. So I'm really interested in, but in addition to autobiography, I just really like science fiction.
Yeah.
But a good number of science fiction authors, Arthur C. Clarke, Robert Zelazny, and so on. And in China, Liu Cixin, who's famous for the three-body trilogy, they use a lot of Buddhist metaphors. And I'm really interested in exploring that because the whole pitch is, if you are going to choose a framework to explore outer space, like which framework would you choose? Like a Christian one, where the whole sacred text is only about one specific planet being privileged and one person dying for a specific class of living beings, or a religion that has emptiness as a heart at the core of its doctrinal ideas, that allows space for lots of aliens, different Buddha fields, different planets where people might. Right? Buddhism has all of these things.
Yeah.
And so, so I think this presence of Yoda in Star Wars, that's no coincidence, right? I think there are real things, as humanity, Elon Musk has his way, as humanity becomes multiplanetary, and maybe someday that will happen, right? I think Buddhism provides a really interesting framework of looking at life on other planets, of floating in outer space, etc. So that's kind of what I'm exploring with that.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Well, you're obviously on a good track. And when we first started talking, you brought up the thing. Zen is the teaching beyond words and letters. But anybody, I feel a lot of people have been sort of mau-maued away from writing about or expressing anything about it because I feel like that it's and I've run into this, people who are afraid to say too much about themselves because it might look like that they're vain or it's selfish or this or that. Man, forget about all that stuff and just express yourself, right? And one thing, I quote a friend of mine frequently who said, since the way beyond words and letters, and all the teachers that followed that strictly, their lineages didn't continue. And Suzuki was asked about that. Do we have to read? Do we have to study? Can't we just? And he said, "Yeah, I wish I could say yes, but I don't think so." So you seem to be channeling something good. So I think you should do it unrestrained. And the way I look at it is there's, Gary Snyder asked about his environmental work, probably to Oda Roshi in Japan, and what do you think about that? And whoever the teacher was, he said whether it's two practices for a monk, zazen and sweeping the temple. So sweeping the temple is the environmental work, right? Or the writing, or it's and I think about that. Well, there's zazen, and there's I once I say sometimes look at it a Hindu point of view, sort of like karma, like doing my duty, or living out my karma, and I was asked once. I was said somewhere. It wasn't a question. Somebody said something about how nice it was, how devoted I was, and I said it's not devotion, it's compulsion. And I think it's good to follow. And that's like following your following, like Joseph Campbell said, follow your bliss.
Yeah, but that's for me. That's the message I heard Watts telling me as well, right? It's not,
Yeah.
once you embrace who you already are, and you also accept the fact that you don't need to do anything, right? You don't need to do or be anything. But it doesn't mean that you won't do anything. And you write books, you do podcasts, you express yourself through work, through all kinds of things, through raising children. So it's we can't help ourselves but to do something with our lives.
Right.
And that's great, and that's fantastic. But it's not we're not. It's not because of an idea that we need to that we're already perfect, right? We don't need to do anything else.
Yeah.
But yet we still do things because that's who we are. So,
yeah. To me, it's all different versions of writing a poem on a leaf and throwing it in the creek, watching it float downstream, or like someone was it you saying? Was it someone just said? I don't think feel like writing in the sand.
Yeah, exactly.
Was that you who said that? I heard that very
recently.
No,
I did not say it in the podcast, but it does resonate with me.
Yeah, but I used to improvise songs, and I did it for years. And one day I thought, and it was endless. I could just keep doing it. I thought, I can never remember any of it. I'm going to start writing it down. And it's 1972, after I've been living at Tassajara since 67 at the March, and I started writing them down. And I've always written them down since then, and I like that because I have a giant collection of songs, over 11,000. And recording them. My God. But what is it? It's just something to do. I don't know.
So what's better than to sing songs, right? Like this is yes, life has there's emptiness, etc., but there's also joy, right? And we make that's what we do as human beings. We create things. Marvel at them, and that's a wonderful thing to do, I think.
Oh, I said 11,000. I meant 1,100.
That's okay. That's still a lot.
So I met with your class in 2 years ago. How long ago was it?
It was a while ago. Yes. I think maybe it was more than 2 years ago.
Was it 2019? I saw that number recently. That'd be 6 years ago.
No, it was later than 2019.
No.
Maybe it was 4 years ago or something. Anyway, in any case, it was definitely during COVID.
I really enjoyed that. I mean, it was really different. And you
liked it?
Oh, yeah. That was, I can't remember what it was about. You probably, Did you record it? I think you sent it to me. Or did you not record it?
I might have sent because you requested the recording. I think I did send it to you. But yeah.
I wonder where it is because, see, one thing is now we'll have a place for you on Kook.com, and I'd like to put that next to it. I have to find it. You don't know where it is, do you?
Yeah, I can. After our conversation, I can look for it, and if I find it again, I'll send you the link.
Same here. I'll might be able to find it somewhere. Well, gee, anything else?
No, I think that's it. I think I'm hungry, and I think I want to go get lunch. But this was really a pleasure, David.
Yeah.
Like this.
I enjoyed it. Yeah, it's good. I want to be around younger people as much as possible. I am around younger people, and yeah, well, it's getting to be where everybody's younger. But yeah, it's good. It's very refreshing. And I'm glad to see what you're doing. Stay in touch. Let me know what you're up to. Okay. Well,
okay, David.
A pleasure.
Pleasure is all mine.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You take care. So thanks a lot, Ben van Overmeire. Thanks a lot, Ben. I really enjoyed talking with you. I'm very, very impressed with, well, for one thing, how educated you are, but also what you're doing with it. It's really interesting, and like I said when we said goodbye, I look forward to see what you do next. This has been a Kook Audio podcast. I'm DC Poobah of Kook Audio and Kook Archives, coming to you from sleepy Sanur with Dog and Bandita, Feline Manis, and dear lovely Katrinka. And we're wishing you and yours and all of us a grand awakening.